The Galactic Science Consortium ship descended through the purple clouds of Vareth 7, a planet that had remained hidden from all known star maps until 3 cycles ago. Commander Thelix pressed her scaled face against the viewport, her 4 eyes scanning the alien landscape below. She had spent 40 years studying unknown worlds, and this discovery would cement her legacy among the consortium's greatest scientists. The sensors had detected something remarkable during their approach: signs of intelligent life. A civilization that had never been contacted by any of the 32 known species in the galaxy. Thelix's heart raced with anticipation. First contact protocols were already prepared. Translation matrices were ready. This moment would change everything. "Commander, we are detecting unusual readings from the northern continent," her navigation officer announced. He was a Kellorax, a species known for their precise measurements and calm demeanor. But even his voice carried a hint of confusion. Thelix turned from the window. "What kind of readings?" "Electromagnetic signatures. They appear to be communication signals, but they do not match any frequency patterns in our database. And Commander, there is something else." The screen flickered and displayed the data. Thelix studied the patterns, her confusion growing with each passing moment. The signals were not coming from the native civilization. They were coming from a separate location, approximately 300 kilometers from the largest settlement. "Is there another intelligent species on this planet?" she asked. The navigation officer shook his head slowly. "No, Commander. The signals appear to be human." The word hung in the air like a physical presence. Thelix felt her scales tighten against her body. Humans, the youngest species to achieve interstellar travel. The strange, soft-bodied creatures who had stumbled into the galactic community barely 200 years ago. They were considered primitive by most standards, lacking the telepathic abilities of the Mandari, the physical strength of the Gorth, or the technological precision of the Kellorax. They were survivors, nothing more. Adaptable, but unremarkable. "That is impossible," Thelix said firmly. "This planet was discovered by our long-range sensors. No other species had the technology to detect it. Check your readings again." The navigation officer ran the scan 3 more times. Each result came back the same. Human communication signals were broadcasting from the planet's surface. And based on the signal degradation, they had been broadcasting for at least 6 months. Thelix sat down heavily in her command chair. 6 months. The consortium had spent 18 months planning this expedition after the discovery. They had assembled the finest scientists from 12 species. They had prepared contact protocols that took into account every possible biological and cultural variation. And somehow, humans had arrived first. "Set course for the human signals," she ordered. "I want to understand what is happening here." The ship adjusted its trajectory and swept across the alien landscape. Below them stretched forests of crystalline trees that caught the light of the binary suns and scattered rainbows across the ground. Rivers of liquid silver wound through valleys carved by ancient geological forces. It was beautiful beyond description, and Thelix found herself wondering how the humans had seen it for the first time. The settlement came into view after 20 minutes of flight. Thelix expected to see a military outpost or a hastily constructed research station. What she saw instead made her freeze in her seat. A village had grown at the edge of the native civilization's territory. Simple structures made from local materials stood in neat rows. Gardens flourished between the buildings. And walking through the paths between structures, Thelix could see both humans and the native Varathians moving together, talking together, working together. "This cannot be correct," she whispered. The native Varathians were unlike any species she had encountered. They stood on 4 legs, their bodies covered in soft fur that shifted colors with their emotions. Their faces held large, gentle eyes, and their mouths seemed permanently curved in expressions that resembled human smiles. According to the consortium's preliminary scans, they had achieved basic agricultural civilization but had not yet developed complex technology. And yet, here they were, sharing their world with human visitors as if it were the most natural thing in the universe. The ship landed in an open field near the settlement. Thelix assembled her contact team and prepared to exit. She had rehearsed first contact scenarios hundreds of times throughout her career. She had never rehearsed walking into a situation where someone else had already completed the process. The airlock opened, and Thelix stepped onto the soil of Varus 7. The air smelled sweet, filled with unfamiliar pollens and the distant scent of rain. A crowd had gathered to watch the ship land. Humans and Varathians stood side by side, their expressions curious but unafraid. A human woman stepped forward from the group. She was tall for her species, with dark hair pulled back from her face and skin weathered by exposure to alien elements. She wore clothing made from local materials, and around her neck hung a necklace of colorful stones that matched ones worn by several Varathians nearby. "Welcome to Voth 7, the woman said. "My name is Elena Vasquez. I assume you are from the Galactic Consortium." Thelix found herself momentarily unable to speak. The human's confidence was unsettling. She stood on a planet that should have been completely unknown, speaking to a senior consortium commander as if she were hosting a garden party. "I am Commander Thelix of the Galactic Science Consortium," she finally managed. "We are here as part of an official first contact expedition. Please explain your presence on this world." Elena smiled. It was a warm expression, genuine and welcoming. "That is a long story, Commander. Perhaps you and your team would like to join us for a meal while I explain. The Varathians have prepared a welcoming feast. They are very excited to meet more visitors from the stars." Thelix looked past Elena to the gathered Varathians. Several of them waved their appendages in gestures that appeared friendly. Their fur had shifted to bright shades of blue and gold, which Elena had explained meant happiness and welcome. Against her better judgment, Thelix agreed to the meal. The feast was held in a large open structure that the humans called a gathering hall. It had been built cooperatively, Elena explained, using human architectural knowledge and Varathian craftsmanship. The walls were decorated with artwork from both cultures, hung side by side without hierarchy or preference. Elena sat beside Thelix and began her explanation while food was served. She had been part of a small exploration crew, just 5 humans in a privately funded ship. They had detected unusual energy readings near this system and had decided to investigate. Their ship had suffered damage during the approach and had been forced to land for repairs. "We thought we were alone," Elena said. "For 3 days, we worked on the ship without realizing that the Varathians were watching us from the forest. On the 4th day, a group of them approached our camp." Thelix listened with growing disbelief. "You made contact without proper protocols? Without translation technology? Without understanding their culture?" Elena nodded. "We had nothing except ourselves. One of our crew members, Marcus, he started by drawing pictures in the dirt. Simple things. The sun. Our ship. Use. The Varathians understood immediately. They started drawing back. The story continued through the meal. The humans had spent their first month learning to communicate through drawings, gestures, and eventually simple sounds. They had lived among the Varathians, eating their food, helping with their harvests, playing with their children. By the time their ship was repaired, they had formed genuine friendships. "We could have left," Elena admitted. "But they asked us to stay. Not with words yet, but we understood. They were curious about us, about where we came from, about the stars they had watched all their lives without knowing that someone was looking back." Thelix thought about the consortium's contact protocols, years of development, committees of experts, detailed procedures for every possible situation. And 5 humans with broken ship had accomplished more in 6 months than the consortium could have achieved in 6 years. "How did you establish such trust?" Thelix asked. "The Varathians show no fear of you. They have integrated you into their society completely. Elena considered the question carefully. I think it is because we came to them as equals. We did not arrive with advanced technology meant to impress them. We did not present ourselves as superior beings from the stars. We were just people, far from home, who needed help. And they helped us. A Varathian approached the table, carrying a bowl of sweet fruit. Elena thanked them in their language, a series of melodic sounds that flowed naturally from her human mouth. The Varathian responded with words that made Elena laugh, and they exchanged what appeared to be a familiar joke. Thelix watched this interaction with emotions she could not name. The consortium had always believed that first contact required careful management, that primitive species needed to be slowly introduced to galactic civilization, that the shock of learning about the wider universe could damage cultures that were not prepared. Yet here were the Varathians, seemingly undamaged, happy, even, excited about the possibilities that the future held. Your people have changed everything we thought we knew about first contact, Thelix finally said. Elena shook her head. We did not do anything special. We just remembered something that I think more advanced species sometimes forget. What is that? That everyone, regardless of how different they look or how far apart their worlds might be, wants the same basic things: friendship, understanding, the feeling that they are not alone in the universe. Elena looked around the gathering hall at humans and Varathians sharing food and conversation. Technology can build ships that cross galaxies, but only kindness can build bridges between hearts. Thelix remained on Vera 7 for 3 weeks, observing the relationship between humans and Varathians. She watched human doctors treating Varathian illnesses with simple remedies. She watched Varathian elders teaching human children about the history of their world. She watched two species that had nothing in common except their existence learning from each other every single day. When she finally returned to the consortium headquarters, her report was unlike anything she had ever written. It was not about protocols or procedures. It was about a small group of humans who had reminded the galaxy that the most powerful force in the universe was not technology, or military might, or scientific advancement. It was simply the willingness to sit beside someone different and say, "Tell me about yourself." The report sparked debates that lasted for years. Some species dismissed it as luck. Others called it dangerous. But a growing number began to wonder if the humans understood something that older civilizations had forgotten. Perhaps the key to unity among the stars had never been about superiority or control. Perhaps it had always been about the simple courage to reach out a hand in friendship. And somewhere on Vera 7, Elena Vasquez sat with her Varathian friends, watching the stars come out, telling stories about a universe that had suddenly become much smaller and much warmer than anyone had ever imagined.